We did get an update on the Monster Hunter thing, though. So, false alarm, chat. They fixed it. So, we thought that Monster Hunter Wild was broken, but actually, our friend Daniel Owen actually uploaded a video. So, he's updating us on the Monster Hunter thing. Granted, of course, I already uploaded that video last week or so. And, well, you know. We'll see what's going on with the, with this, at least. Well, we'll see. Quotation marks fixed anyways. I gotta hear this. I gotta know if they actually fixed it. I want to know what
This
he
is
did.
now my third video testing out the performance improvements in Monster Hunter Wilds after the title update 4 on PC. In my first video, I noticed that GPU performance improved by about 5% on a 5060 Ti 16GB, but I noticed that on my CPU, testing on a Ryzen 5 5600X, performance was actually significantly worse after the update. In the comment section, a bunch of people asked me about deleting the shader cache, what about my GPU drivers, etc. So I released a second video testing all of that out, and none of it solved the problem.
And it was worse.
However, I have now tried again. This time, I tried doing nothing. Now, what do I mean by that? I tried sitting in one place for a really long time, and it worked. But why would this possibly work?
What?
So when I was reading through the comment section where people were arguing about whether they had performance improvements or worse performance or the same performance, I noticed a number of comments saying that their performance was worse, like mine, but then it eventually got better. And what that made me think is, I wonder if with this title update, they shifted some of the shader compilation away from the initial shader compilation screen when you load the game, which I didn't time. I wish I had pre and post patch, because my feeling of the time it took was that it was quicker after the Title 4 update than it was on the Title 3 update. Because to be clear, on both the Title 3 testing I did and the Title 4 testing, it was fresh game install, fresh fresh drivers, all of that. So it did that shader pre-compilation screen both times I loaded up the game, but my impression of Title...
See, he had to wait for the F-bus gain. Bet you can do the same when replaying WoW. I am never replaying Wild, but I will play your mom's ass every single night like the Bogon drops on Donkey Kong. On the Donkey Kong game or stuff from a long ass time ago. So shut your bitch ass up. I don't want to hear it from you, mister.
3 update was, it took a really long time. Go do the dishes, go get a snack, come back, it might still be running.
So you're telling me in order for the game to run better, I just have to sit there for who knows how long or so for it to be better? Okay.
The Title 4 update seemed quicker than that. Still a noticeable shader compilation, but again, I didn't actually time it. So my thought here is, if they've moved shader compilation, at least some of it, to happen asynchronously when you're actually playing the game, then if you just wait long enough, will it finally complete? Now, if I skip ahead in this testing, quite a ways. I think we need to go like 15, 20 minutes into standing still here.
15 to 20
You'll notice,
minutes
again,
just
CPU usage still the limiting factor, still low, but we're getting there, guys. We are getting there. And eventually, if I keep moving forward, right here, you'll notice that the performance suddenly spikes up.
So at 16 minutes of just standing here, of literally not doing anything, the game gets better. That is the most weirdest logic I've ever seen in my entire life for a video game.
And the CPU is no longer as close to 100% utilization. Now, we're still CPU limited, the GPU usage is low, and there's probably some individual thread limiting performance here, but suddenly the behavior is very, very different. So after doing that, I then decided to actually run tests. So I had run a fresh test, that's what we're seeing here on the left. So this is not my initial testing, this was literally, I ran this test, and at the end of the test, I got off my mount, stood here, and waited. Then, after waiting and noticing CPU performance suddenly spike a little bit better, after waiting long enough, and it seemed to be consistent once we waited long enough, right? After that, I just went back to the title screen,
Right.
reloaded the save, and that's what we're seeing here on the right-hand side. So this is before waiting and after waiting. Same day, this is all this morning, right before filming this video. And what do you know? My performance has increased by 23%. This is, again, CPU limited performance on both sides.
Really?
It's running on a Ryzen 5 5600X. It's the same system.
Really?
It's all I did was just sit there and wait for a bit. If you're noticing some visual differences, keep in mind that there's dynamic weather. So the cloud cover.
You know what this reminds me of? So I have an old car, right? I have an 84 car, okay? The year 1984. You literally have to wait for the car to warm up before you even go anywhere to drive. So you have to sit there while the car is turned on for a couple of minutes or so the car can warm up a little bit. This is literally the exact same thing. I'm like, at that point, it's just kind of like, you know, it just doesn't work that way.
Can slightly vary and make things look slightly different between runs. But that's what this is. Same driver version. By the way, this is the, because the latest drivers have been reported as causing issues. These tests are both running on going drivers back to the ones that the Monster Hunter Wilds team has stated are safe. So I think it's like 25.9.1. Anyway, so that's what we're seeing here. Also notice the 1% lows have improved by 39%. So massive improvement compared to before just sitting there and waiting. So as far as I can tell, what they've done that caused the worse performance on the CPU is it seems like they've shifted some of the shader compilation to happen asynchronously while you're playing the game. Now, what I can't confirm from this testing is whether you're going to encounter this every time you enter a new zone, or if this is specifically like once that initial shader burn is done, then you're just good to go. Now, CPU performance certainly hasn't improved, but we're at least back to around where we started. I'm actually showing slightly worse performance, not by much, but remember, I'm now on the 25.9.1 drivers, whereas my initial testing in my original video was on the newer drivers before I had tried regressing them in this video based on the patch notes saying that
I still think this specific update isn't going to really be that massive of an improvement compared to the one in January. The one in January is the one I'm curious about a little bit more. But am I going to play it? No, I'm still not going to play it anymore. Why would I continue even playing it?
Potentially be issues, and I was isolating for that variable. Hey, since we're here, I also tested out another thing, because I noticed that some people were saying that they saw huge performance increases, whereas my testing was showing that when we were GPU limited, and I was getting a performance increase, it was only about 5%. But I noticed the people who said they were getting big performance increases and listed their specs, they tended to be on 8 gigabyte graphics cards. So the good news is I did have a few Title Update 3 runs on my 5060 Ti 8 gigabyte version, which I could then compare to some fresh testing on the Title 4 update, and that's what we're looking at here. And I've tested it at all of the presets. Now, I didn't test my 8 gigabyte card with DLSS resolution scaling turned on, so this is all native resolution at 1440p. So at 1440p Ultra, I can see a 18% performance uplift between the Title 3 update and the Title 4 update. Notice that now we're using a 9800X 3D based CPU system, so we are not running into CPU limited performance issues. This is all GPU performance. So previously, the game, at least what we're seeing here on the Ultra settings, was struggling more on the 8 gigabyte graphics card than it is currently. So performance has improved. So it seems like they're doing something better with how it handles of the VRAM situation. Now, I think we're still over 8 gigabytes of VRAM, and you can see a couple of spikes just happen on the frame time graph right here as we kind of came into a new area. So I still think the 8 gigabyte cards are having some problems on the Ultra settings, at least at 1440p, but it seems to be handling it a lot better than it was previously. Now, that being said, as soon as you get a few monsters on the screen, we're still well below 60 FPS here, so I'm not saying the game is like super well optimized, but it's certainly running better on the 8 gigabyte card than we saw previously. Now, I was curious
Hey, Chaos.
Turning down settings, if we would continue to see the 8 gigabyte VRAM card have as noticeable improvements, or if it was just on the ultra settings. So I did go ahead and test out the high settings as well. So 1440p high settings, I'm seeing the average frame rate here improve from 53 to 61. That's a 15% improvement. By the way, the benchmark pass that I'm using here, some people think I'm using the benchmark tool, which did not get updated with this patch. Saw that in my comment section on my last videos. This is the mission 1 in the game where you're on this secret ride, however you pronounce this animal. Again, I've said in the other videos, I don't really play this game. People just wanted me to test it out. I tried the game and just kind of bounced off, didn't find it enjoyable. But this ride at the beginning of mission 1 is scripted to where you can take your hands off the controls and get a repeatable run for apples to apples comparisons. That's what I'm using here for the testing. Anyway, so the high settings here, again, we're seeing a 15% performance increase from Title Update 3 to Title Update 4 on the 8 gigabyte card. Remember, we saw a performance improvement on the 16 gigabyte card, but it was much less than 15%. So it's showing that some of the improvement is more noticeable on the 8 gigabyte card. So I also tested out medium settings to see if we would still see any noticeable improvements. And here on the medium settings, we're noticing an 11% improvement. I'm seeing a 57 FPS run become a 63 FPS run. So again, noticeable improvement here. And then going down to the low settings, I saw things improve as well, but this time only by 6%. Now, this is more in line with what I was seeing on the 16 gigabyte card. So in other words, it seems like at the ultra settings, high settings, and medium settings, in the Title Update 3, the 8 gigabyte card was having some issues where the 16 gigabyte card was not, which is why Title Update 4 has apparently is showing some improvements on the 8 gigabyte cards, how they're handling the VRAM situation. And that's why we're seeing more performance increase on the 8 gigabyte 5060 Ti than what we're seeing on what I saw on the 16 gigabyte card. Now, on the low settings, we're now seeing performance in line with the 16 gigabyte card, showing that these settings weren't having issues on the 8 gigabyte card, at least that showed up in this particular test run. I also tested out the lowest settings, and they really seemed about the same as what I was seeing on the low settings. So I'm wondering if the performance preset, I didn't look at every individual setting that gets used. I'm turning off the upscaling. So one of the differences between the presets, if you just click the preset and don't adjust upscaling, is that they use different levels of upscaling. So I'm pretty sure the lowest settings go to ultra performance mode DLSS, but I'm disabling that. So I think that's why we're seeing about the same performance here. So basically, we can make some conclusions now, further than what I could initially. So it looks like CPU performance has not necessarily gotten worse overall. It's just they made a change to their to how they are dealing with shader compilation on your initial boot of the game. It seems like they've offloaded it. Some more of it happened during gameplay, perhaps to reduce the length of the shader compilation screen. But that means people who are CPU limited, and this game gets CPU limited at pretty low frame rates, meaning a lot of people are likely to be CPU limited, are now going to have an worse performance at the beginning than they otherwise would have. I don't think this was a good choice. Again, things that I'm not able to test based on the tests I was able to run on the Title Update 3, which I can't really change now, is I'm not sure how this behavior compares to loading into new zones if you continue to play the game. Are we going to continue to see that, etc.? So that's still kind of a question mark. But at least I do now have something of a, fix, at least for this initial zone, which is to just let the game sit there for a while before you play it. And it should probably finish up that shader pre-compilation and suddenly.
But I still think it's weird though. But I think I don't know. It's just so weird.
Get some increased performance on the CPU after a while. Also, it does look like I can confirm better performance on 8 gigabyte cards than pre the patch. And then the 16 gigabyte cards, in other words, cards that weren't VRAM limited, saw only like a 5% improvement. But cards that were VRAM limited have potentially seen better improvements than that. So that's good to see. They've also promised future patches to further increase performance. But at least for now, I think I'm finally done.
Well, it's because I think they're getting ready for their expansion, so they gotta make that money revenue somehow, you know. So that's probably what it is. But okay, all right. I guess in order for you to fix it or so, you just have to stand there and for roughly 16 minutes and do nothing. If you want better performance for Monster Hunter Wilds, so will I ever play the game if they fix it? No. Just because I'm just not a huge fan of the changes that they did for my class specifically, so I will not be playing it. Why would I want to play something if I'm not having fun at the end of the day? So it just feels like a waste of time and a waste of my energy to begin with. I'd rather go play the other Monster Hunter games like Monster Hunter Rise, Monster Hunter World, maybe Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, you know, or whatever other one, or Monster Hunter Frontiers. That is also a possibility, so yeah. Interesting. Well, false alarm, chat. I guess Monster Hunter Wilds is not broken. Yet. Anyways. They will never unnerf the bow guns. They'll never even touch it, to be honest. They never will. The expansion will fix all classes just like Iceborne. Nah, I'm good. I'm good. They can keep their DLC. I'm not even gonna pay for that DLC or the expansion for that game, to be honest. That's all I gotta say. I'm not even gonna bother even playing the expansion. It's just not going to interest me whatsoever. Nope. No siree. I'll watch a video on it to see if, you know, be like, to take a look at the changes, take a look at the new stuff and everything, but I'm not going to play it though. But yeah. They already killed the funness out of me, so for it, I'm just kind of like, you know what? You do you, I'll do me. I'll go play some of your older titles instead and just have more fun that way. So